Hello and welcome to the video. Once again, my name is Wade Daniel Smith. And in this video, I'm going to talk about Stephen Hawking and the unfortunate tragedy of his life because he made things worse on himself than his disease already did, as you'll see in this video. All right. So, if you've ever read his books, which I read the two most important ones that I know of, A Brief History of Time and Black Holes and Baby Universes and Other Essays, and I'm sure that it must be the Black Holes and Baby Universes and Other Essays. After the main topic in the main book, he writes a series of essays about musings and whatnot. But in one of the chapters of this section of the book, he pretty much starts off by denying God right away and claiming that God was just a fairy tale. Even though most atheists will try to claim that you can't prove God because, according to them anyway, God can't be falsified. And then, according to most atheists, they will actually make the lie that not falsifiable, therefore false lie is what most atheists will then try to argue against God. So apparently, Stephen Hawking is making the same lie when he claims that he does not believe in God and rejects God right away at the very beginning of the essay. So he's apparently making a not falsifiable, therefore false argument and rejecting God because of it right away. So then he starts talking about determinism and the universe. And after like so many pages of talking about stuff, he didn't ask the question all of a sudden, which was almost the right question, but unfortunately he had rejected the answer to it falsely before he got to this part of the essay. He suddenly asked the question, what breathes fire into everything? Because he proved that the universe did not come from absolutely nothing, which he still claimed to believe that later. But in the essays, he proved that the universe did not come from nothing. And he also proved that the universe was not self-eternal. And he also, although he later claimed to believe in a zero boundary hypothesis of some kind, he also proved in the essay that there was no such thing as a zero boundary hypothesis. Even though he later changed his mind and started arguing for a zero boundary hypothesis, supposedly. But then he suddenly asked the question after all of that, what breathes fire into everything? How does it work? Where did it come from? Well, he rejected the answer to that irrationally and for no good reason before he got to that question. Ahead of time. And the answer is that an almighty being existed forever before the universe itself, and that almighty being has no cause outside of himself, and that almighty being is in fact a mind, a personal being, and that almighty being in fact created all of reality outside of himself, and that is the only rational explanation of anything. As hard as that might be for some people to believe and understand. Myself and Bruce, and incidentally, he's a Jehovah's Witness, and I do not believe in Jehovah's Witness because, for one thing, he falsely claimed that Jesus was a God, and I don't believe in Jesus at all. But he falsely claimed that Jesus was a God, not the God, and I'm like, that violates the first commandment anyway. But anyway, he was a Jehovah's Witness, but at least he knew enough philosophy to know that there was an Almighty God, even though he violated the first commandment of his own self. And so one day he and I were talking to another gentleman, and the other gentleman is like 65 years old and ought to have known better. So we're talking about the Almighty God and the fact that the Almighty God was not created by anything outside of himself. And then all of a sudden, the third guy bursts out and asks, who made God? And we said, we just told you nobody made God. It tells you that in the Bible. That God always existed. There was no God before God. There was no God beside God. And he says, there will be no God after me. He says, I'm not going to make another God. So to claim that Jesus was God because allegedly God begot him is a lie, because the God in the law and the prophets said, I'm not going to make another God ever. The God did. So Jesus claiming to be begotten by God and then elevated to be co-equal with God is a lie. It was already preemptively rebuked about 800 years ahead of time by Isaiah and 1300 years ahead of time by Balaam. God is not a man nor the son of man. Period. So anyway, Stephen Hawking asked almost the right question suddenly out of nowhere in the essay. What breathes fire into it at all? And the answer is the Almighty God that he rejected before he even started thinking about it. The first thing he did in the essay was reject God ahead of time before he even thought about the answer. He flat out rejected God without even offering a rational argument for or against God, or even attempting to understand God, and claimed that God was a fairy tale and a complete myth before he even started to think about the answer rationally. So then he's already rejected God before, with no rational reason. And then when he gets to the question that in fact God is the answer to, he could not answer it because he started out with a falsehood. Whereas a valid argument starts out with something that you already know to be true, or an axiom that you're pretty sure is so true that you have no idea of any proof against it. Because an axiom is something that you think is almost certainly true, but don't know how to prove true, but you have absolutely no proof against, so you're pretty sure that it must be true. An example of an axiom is the two postulates of the Copernican principle. We don't occupy, well, number one, we don't occupy a special place in reality as the first axiom of the Copernican principle. And the second axiom of the Copernican principle is that the laws of reality are the same for all of space and time. That's the Copernican principle. And Einstein's relativity, both special and general relativity, its first axiom restates the second axiom of the Copernican principle and further qualifies the axiom. It says the laws of the universe are the same not only for all space and time, but for every observer in every reference frame. So people who claim that relativity is somehow justifying moral relativity is a lie. He said the exact opposite of that the laws of reality are the same for every observer in every reference frame. So you can't try to claim that the definition of goodness is different for one person than another person, least of all because of this theory of special or general relativity, because it literally says the exact opposite of that the laws have to be the same for everybody, for all, not only for all space and time, but in every reference frame. That's the first postulate of both special and general relativity. And the second postulate, which it may as well be an axiom because we have absolutely no evidence against it and everything suggests that it must be true, is that the speed of light in vacuum is in fact not only the ultimate speed inside of the universe. He did not even say that. He said the speed of light in vacuum is the ultimate speed of the universe. Which means that scientists, the false scientists who try to claim that the universe itself is expanding faster than light, did not read the second postulate of relativity correctly, because I've looked it up in both Einstein's original papers and in the modern textbooks. It does not say that the speed of light in vacuum is the ultimate speed inside of the universe, nor does it allow the empty space to expand faster than light. It says the speed of light is the ultimate speed of the universe. So the claim that the universe is expanding faster than light, if that is true, proves that general relativity would have to be false. But they've never proven that it is expanding faster than light at all. Because every evidence that I've seen only shows that the universe must be at least 6 or 7 times older than the current standard model, is what I think. And it might even be older than that. So people make up whatever lie they want to believe, even if they claim to be scientists. They just flat out lie about something that the other scientists absolutely proved had to be true. They'll then lie about it and make up a new myth. They'll twist his words and try to contort his words to mean something they never said, just like the Supreme Court contorted the 14th Amendment, the evil Supreme Court did in the Roe versus Wade ruling, to try to redefine what a life form was and then claim that a baby was not a life form. That you could just murder a baby and get away with it indefinitely. And that is absurd, but that's what the 7 of the 9 Supreme Court justices did in the Roe versus Wade ruling is literally redefine the definition of the word life and claim that a baby was not a life form. And that you could just murder it whenever you felt like, just because you were too damn lazy to raise it, and that was somehow legal. That's what they did in the Roe versus Wade ruling. And then they did not have the constitutional power to do that. And then they went even further and did not definitely have the constitutional power to do what they did next, which was to claim that the Congress could not make an amendment amending the Constitution to refute them. They claimed that they had the constitutional authority to forbid Congress from ever overriding them by making a new amendment to the Constitution, which they did not have that authority. But for some reason, the Congress submitted to that claim, when all 7 of those evil judges should have been impeached and put on trial for high treason and murder. And that's what should have happened at the Roe versus Wade ruling, and it didn't. All right, that's the end of the video. I got a little off topic, but it is absurd how much falsehood people will invent out of absolutely nowhere for no good reason other than they want to be a liar.